April 3rd on a Thursday. Oh man. April 3rd on a Thursday. Let me turn this more this way for you guys. April 3rd on a Thursday, guys, 9:48 p.m. This is probably the latest I've live streamed. Like since I started live streaming. That's okay. Sometimes we have busy days and we gotta do what we gotta do, right, y'all? And one thing we don't do is live stream. That's one thing we don't do. So what's up, everybody? Say what's up in the chat as you come in. Hit that like button. Say hi, Q. Some of y'all gonna say good morning. Some of y'all gonna say good night. I'm cool with that. Just hit the like button for me because it's free. Alright, do I have everything going on? I do. Man, that weather broke fast, and it's not even complete where I'm at, but it's already getting hot, y'all. Some of y'all have probably been hot. All right, guys, April 3rd, 2025 on a Thursday. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV live stream. As per usual, guys, we live stream over here every single day except Sunday. Normally, I'm on about between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. But there are some days where, because I have a wife and a job and a life and a family, that, yeah, I just get on really late. But that's not the point. The point is that I get on here. So, again, guys, welcome. Let me go through the menu as per usual. I'm not trying to stay on here a long time tonight. There was just a few quick things I wanted to go over that I saw in the news today. One of them I saw probably 2 or 3 days ago, but I was debating if I was going to bring it up, and then I was like, you know what, this was a big deal last year, so let me just talk about it. So let's do the rundown real quick. We're going to start out with Bill O'Reilly. Shout out to Bill. He covered Trump's tariffs explained, plus is Elon Musk out. So, yesterday, April 2nd, President Trump, his tariffs went global, so they went worldwide. I'm thinking this is his retaliatory tariffs or his reciprocal tariffs, meaning that if someone is now charging the United States because he initiated 25% tariff, now it will be doubled. So whatever they now issue the United States, it'll be reciprocal. So basically what they charge is what we charge. And that pretty much went live yesterday. I don't feel like it sent people in more of a frenzy than what they already have been in. People have been tripping about tariffs for a couple of months now, so I didn't think this was going to be any different. I just know that now that it's actually here and it's live and all of it, like we're not waiting on a slow rollout anymore. That now a lot of people are just going to be watching the economy, and they're going to want to see like if what Trump is doing is going to make the economy or if it's going to break it. So the reciprocal tariffs, I feel like, are necessary. The thing with that, he did do a press conference in the Oval Office probably about a week and a half ago, and a reporter asked him, does this mean that if another country comes out and they've issued a 25% tariff on the United States, that we will have a reciprocal 25% on them, so now they'll be at 50% instead of the initial 25%. And President Trump said yes, that's exactly what that means. So what they charge is what we charge. Mopoma, what's up? How are you? Thanks for stopping by in the chat. Guys, hit that like button while you stop by. Say what's up. Say where you watching from. Hit that like button while you watching. Then we're going to switch gears again. And then he's also going to talk about is Elon Musk out. So I'm not going to spoil that. I looked at that a little bit, but I'm not going to spoil too much about what he's going to say there. Then we'll switch gears a little bit and go over to Face the Nation. Shout out to them. Pentagon reviewing Trump's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's signal usage. So a couple of days ago, I think now it's probably been almost 2 weeks ago maybe, that there was a leak regarding the Signal app. Not really a leak, but Pete Hegseth and a bunch of cabinet members were on this Signal app communicating with one another, and there was a reporter who was added to the chat that is not a part of the United States cabinet, so that wasn't good. And the reporter, which I think is very suspect, instead of exiting out of the chat right away, he sticks around for like a day or two, sees information, and he holds on to it. He doesn't leak any of it, but then he goes to say this was one of the worst leaks in U.S. history, instead of just exiting out of the chat. I mean, I thought that was suspect, but to each is its own. So we'll take a look at what they're saying about Pete Hegseth's signal use. I don't believe Pete Hegseth has had a Senate hearing yet. Let me check real quick. I know that, nope, it still just shows up as his confirmation. I know that Kash Patel was there, Tulsi Gabbard was there, I believe it's John Radcliffe. There were a couple of people there from the cabinet that have already had a Senate hearing on Capitol Hill a couple of days ago. And I was wondering if they were going to call Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to Capitol Hill for a Senate hearing, but I haven't seen one yet. So I'm thinking that he might be in the clear, but there's still a lot of people examining it, so we don't know for sure yet. Then we'll switch gears over to News Center Maine. So I picked a smaller YouTube channel that covered this. The larger ones did too, but just a couple of things they said here that I paid close attention to that I liked. Luigi Mangione faces possibility of death penalty in CEO murder case. So some of you may know who Luigi Mangione is. His case was I want to say a spotlight case last year. This young man basically killed the CEO of a pharmaceutical company. I think it was not just any pharmaceutical company. It was hold on. His name was Brian. Yeah, Brian Thompson. God, who did this man work for? United Healthcare. That's right. Okay. United Healthcare executive Brian Thompson. So Luigi Mangione killed him last year. Everybody saw the epic video footage, right, where Brian is walking down the street. I believe it is. He is on his way to a meeting, and then we see Luigi come up behind him in a hooded jacket with a firearm, and he aims it at Brian and he shoots him in cold blood, and he kind of goes away after that. We learn other details like he was at a McDonald's, he ate a hash brown, so on and so forth. So it very startling case. Caused a lot of controversy. I'm gonna tell you right out the gate, he did get a lot of support. He did. I think his story resonated with a lot of people. I'm not taking his side because I don't think the way that Luigi went about it was right, but nonetheless, that doesn't stop the fact that he has a massive amount of support. That I believe he has a GoFundMe page, and the goal was $1 million, and I know he's currently over 800,000. He's received lots of letters. People show up to his court hearings and give him notes. A lot of support because there have been a lot of people who have dealt with the healthcare system in America and also agree with him that it is very broken, that it has killed people, that it doesn't help people. Not saying that I agree with any of this, but I know that like I said, this is just facts. A lot of people supported this guy right out of the gate as far as like his story, what he may have been through, what his motives were, and we know that. So now there's a new administration in place, and Attorney General Pam Bondi is now directed the Department of Justice to seek the death penalty. When I first saw the headlines, I was a little taken back. I'm not gonna lie. If someone was to be like, "Oh, so you don't think that this man deserved the death penalty because he killed someone in cold blood, a father of 2 young children?" I mean, I'm not gonna say that I believe he deserves the death penalty. I don't think what he did was right. I don't think many people think what he did was right. I don't think the way he went about it was right. But I know a lot of states have abolished the death penalty and or did away with it. So there's a good chance he might not get it. A case has to meet certain prerequisites to even qualify for the death penalty. It's not like you could just put any case up and say, yeah, this person's going for the death penalty, because it could be rejected because it just doesn't hit certain qualifications. But there's a good chance he will spend life in prison. So, we're going to take a look at what they're saying about that. Like, again, super controversial, so I'm not going to get too much into it because I want to watch with you guys and then we talk. Then we'll switch gears a little bit, go over to some Canadian news. Shout out to the Simple Investor, Todd. He says, Mark Carney's shocking take on Trump's tariffs. He panics. So we're gonna take a little bit of a look at what Mark Carney is up to. I know today Pierre Poilievre had um, he had a live rally. I think it was in Ottawa. Yeah, 6,500 Canadians railed in Oshawa's tonight to put Canada and our workers first. Yeah, so I know Pierre had a live rally tonight, and it did really well. I watched a couple of people cover it. One guy I really liked, the plea. He covered it. He was there. He kind of showed us the line, and it's like that line was ridiculous, and it took him over an hour just to get to the back of the line. Yeah, 6,500 Canadians railed in Oshawa tonight to put Canada and our workers first. Conservatives will fight for our land, our country, and our people. So shout out to Canada, shout out to Pierre. We'll switch gears over there and see what's going on with Mark Carney. I'll cover some more with Pierre tomorrow, and then we will end the live with a clip from Cliff Buell, as we do every single night. And tonight he will be talking about, are you this type of Christian? So we're gonna have a conversation about certain types of Christians that people run into, that we definitely saw during Bible times, and we still see today, but it's a little problematic. Let's say Christians who are very, very good with the word, know the word, can recite the word, but don't have love in their heart. That's always problematic, right? So with that being said, guys, welcome to Cozy Corner TV. I am your host, Kieran Smith. Call me Q, and we are on the corner. We're on the corner, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and start this off. I'm not going to keep you guys too late tonight. So let's go ahead and jump right in.
O'Reilly here. Welcome to the No Spin News, Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. Stand up for your country. Well, I'm very glad you're here today. This is an important broadcast for you, your family, all of that. This is not a podcast. That drives me nuts. This is a broadcast which conforms to journalistic rules where facts rule. Donald Trump is taking a big risk, not only with himself and his administration, but with us. Every other president since World War II would not take that risk. Every other president knew that the USA was getting hosed in foreign trade. From Truman to Biden. Every one of those men knew it. No one would do anything about it. Now Donald Trump says he will. And that is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. So the president is correct. The data is there. Foreign nations make far more money from trade with America than we make from them. It's in the trillions of dollars when you add it up. How do they do it? Well, I'm going to walk through that. I'm going to tell you exactly how the countries abroad are screwing us. Why aren't Americans aware of this? Two reasons. The press ignores it. It's too boring, it's too complicated. And we live pretty well here. Despite the bad trade deals, we live pretty well.
So Bill says two reasons why. Like historically, America has been getting screwed in trade deals. He says from President Truman all the way to President Biden, they all have known this and no one has done anything about it. So why is this happening and why don't many people know about it? So Bill O'Reilly says, one, it's boring. So the media is not going to cover it because it is boring. No one's going to be interested in it. And it's a difficult topic to cover, right? Even though I have spoke about tariffs, Charlie Kirk has spoke about tariffs, Candace Owens has spoke about tariffs, Ben Shapiro, Theo Vaughn, like Bill O'Reilly. I can go, the list goes on and on about, we've seen it on Fox News, what it means. which I think if we have to pick a mainstream media, they're probably at least the most reliable we'll get. So we've seen people talk about tariffs over and over again. President Trump explained why he believes in them, what they did for the United States in the 1800s, and yet people still are enraged about it. They are still highly upset about it, and they cannot understand that for years, for decades, for the longest time, the United States has been getting screwed in trade deals because presidents and administrations just simply wouldn't do anything about it. And we have a president that comes along and says, okay, no. Like, I'm not even going to impose the tariffs that these countries are doing, which I think are disrespectfully high. He's like, but I am going to put something there. Like, we're no longer not going to have anything. Even countries that are only to have 10% tariffs on us, we didn't have anything. And when President Trump came out and he released the United States discounted tariff program, might I add, because the word discounted was included in it. He made sure to say that I'm not even going to charge them as much as they're charging us, and who would be upset about this, but they're going to be upset. He said they're going to be upset because they're not getting charged anything. So even though I'm not even as high as they are right now, they shouldn't be upset, but they are going to be upset. So places that were charging us 10%, he went in at 10%, which I thought that was fair. 10% is low, so he stayed low. Places that were at 63%, he went in about half. So he went in with pretty much a 50 perspective of it. He's like, I'm not even going to charge you. If you're at 150, I'm not going to go to 150. I'll land somewhere around 69, 70%. I thought this was extremely graceful and fair, but you still have people that just don't understand tariffs. So regardless of how anyone breaks it down, they're still just going to be enraged about the fact that President Trump is just entertaining the ideas of tariffs to begin with.
In fact, we live better than anybody else on the planet. So there isn't an urgency like there is with criminal migrants, for example. Okay? Now, Donald Trump has now become the biggest president disruptor in the history of this republic. He passes Theodore Roosevelt. The turn of the 20th century, Roosevelt went after the robber barons, the monopolies. He tried to crush them. It was a brawl. I write about it in Confronting Evil. These robber barons were as bad as you could possibly get, exploiting American workers. But they employed millions of people. Even though most of those people were being exploited, they got a paycheck. So Roosevelt going after these big shots was not popular. Teddy won. He knocked out a lot of the monopolies in this country. Again, people don't know it. History isn't taught anymore. But when you read Confronting Evil, you'll see, because that is an interesting chapter. So Donald Trump has now wiped Teddy off the face of the map by saying to the world, I'm going to fight you off. And once, to get better trade agreements.
Yep.
He might win, like Teddy did. It was painful for Teddy, and nobody knew the outcome for a while. Same thing could happen. Donald Trump could get better trade deals here. That could absolutely happen.
Yep.
But in the short term, today, if you were in the stock market, you lost money. I lost money. I bought a little stock today. Not much. I bought a company that I feel a year from now is going to be very prosperous. And I didn't buy many shares. But that company got whacked. I'm not going to tell you what it is because they can't do that. But I bought a little bit today. I still believe in the American economy and that we are going to do well going forward. But in the next few weeks, boy, oh boy.
It's going to be tough.
The president is making a decision to try to catapult himself up to greatness. Because if it all comes true, and manufacturing comes back to the United States, and investment comes back to the United States, the American worker will prosper big time.
Yes.
But if it doesn't come true, it's going to be hard economic times. All right, do we have it? Okay. Now, enter the press. They want Trump to fail. except for Fox News and Newsmax.
Yep.
Everybody else in the press wants Trump to fail. So as soon as the stock market goes down, you get hysteria. Go.
And so they've taken an economy that was actually in pretty decent shape and moving in the right direction, and they are going to turn it upside down, and I think 50-50 into a recession.
Wow, 50-50. Yeah, as you said, companies like Goldman Sachs using the word stagflation, that combination of inflation and slowing growth.
So that's NBC Comcast. It's going to be a recession. It's going to be horrible. You're going to lose your home. Your kids will be out in the street. You know, that. And then people who are not informed, who aren't watching the No Spin News or listening to it, they don't know. They just don't. Ah, fear is a great political motivator. Okay? So, prices are rigged. This is bad. What Trump is doing is bad. All right. Now, there is a segment, a sliver of information that comes out that is fair. Okay, that's why this broadcast prospers. Excuse me. Last night on News Nation, I was on with Cuomo as I am every Wednesday, and Geraldo was on too. Geraldo just took his family to Japan. Here's what he said. Go.
I can tell you, we went the length and breadth of the island archipelago, and the big cities like Tokyo and the others. We did not see a single American car on the road in Tokyo. Mm-hmm. Not a Caddy, not a Buick, not a Ford, not a Chevy, not a nothing. We have plenty of Toyotas here in my neighborhood and around the country.
And you won't see American cars in China.
Nope.
In South Korea, in Southeast Asia.
Now, I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan. That was actually one of my duty stations when I was on active duty. And this is very right. And when I was in Okinawa, Japan, I was probably there at least over a decade ago. I was out there. And even then, no American made cars. Like, I can name some of the ones that I saw because I still remember some of the names, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's really weird. But there was no, like, the whole time I was stationed there, I didn't see a Ford pickup truck. I didn't see a Buick. I didn't see any Jeeps. Nothing. Like, there was no American made cars out there. So when Bill O'Reilly says, and you won't see it in China, and it's very true. But in America, I can't tell you how many. We have plenty of Toyotas, plenty of Hondas, plenty of Volkswagen, and yes, we know Volkswagen doesn't come from Japan, but plenty of BMW. We have plenty of foreign cars in the United States. We see them all the time. In fact, there are cities that they are known for their like of foreign cars. Some of them, namely being New York State is one of them. So I wouldn't say, you could say New York City. We could say Miami. There's certain places that they love foreign rides. Like, they love exotic cars, right? But then you have certain places where they only love American made, and that's it. Nonetheless, in America, you can see a huge amount of overseas vehicles in our country every day, all of the time, every single place. So it's interesting when Bill O'Reilly says this. I instantly remember being in Japan over 10 years ago and it being the exact same scenario.
You won't see American cars in China, in South Korea, in Southeast Asia, in Germany, and most of the rest of Europe. You will not see them, which is why members of the United Auto Workers Union went to the press conference to bolster President Trump yesterday.
But I do see plenty of American-made cars in Canada all of the time. Like, I see pickup trucks out there. I see a lot of American-made cars out in Canada.
So American cars are shut out, whereas many of us drive foreign cars. Not me.
Nope, not
I
me.
never do that.
Not me.
I have a Cadillac. It's 9 years old. It's a good car, and I'm keeping it. All right? I would never buy a foreign car under any circumstances. All right? Because I buy American.
See, and you have people that are like Bill O'Reilly. He's like, I would never buy a foreign car under any circumstances. Whereas me, at one point, especially when I was younger, and I used to like to race cars, I had foreign cars all of the time. But when it came to bigger vehicles, I did not like foreign cars. So I might have something like, Nissan 350Zs. You have your Honda Accords. You have, Mitsubishi Galants. These are things that you would see kind of souped up that people, if they're into racing and modding small foreign cars, these cars would all make sense to you. But when it came to larger vehicles, I wasn't into foreign cars at all. Like currently right now, the vehicles I have, neither one of them are foreign vehicles, and that's because they're bigger vehicles. So if I had to buy a larger SUV or a truck, I wouldn't buy either one of those foreign made. I would buy those actually American made. But again, I said it, you have people like Bill O'Reilly who are like, I would never buy a foreign made car. And I know a great deal of people like that.
Anyway,
Who've never
Rivera
owned
told
one.
the truth that countries like Japan, which is our big ally, set up a system whereby American cars are so expensive, once they get on the ground in Japan, that no Japanese can pay that money.
Yeah.
And they do that by tariffs, they do that by taxes, VAT, value-added tax, regulations. Oh, we don't like this tire, and you gotta do this, and you gotta do that. So they're shut up.
Yep.
Is that fair? No, it's not fair. That's the best example I can give you. And then you multiply that by 1,000 American products. Our products go all over the world, but many of them cannot get into the individual countries, like India. India makes it almost impossible. Canada, you can't get dairy in there, American dairy. You can't get American crops in there. Okay? Mexico's the same way. They don't want certain product, they slap on all onerous regulations, so you can't get it down there. That's what it's all about. Do we all understand? Raise your hand if you don't. Now, most Americans not watching this broadcast because they're not really seeking information.
Yeah.
They don't understand tariffs. I don't want to be arrogant, but they don't. Go out today and just ask anybody, what's this tariff deal all about? Well, we don't like it. Oh, okay, what don't you like?
Yeah.
They don't know.
I don't know.
So people like that are easily manipulated by the far left hate Democrats.
Yep, I will go and say it.
Now, I had to set News Nation straight last night about what the core issue is here as far as Donald Trump's mind. What is in his mind? Roll the tape. It did affect American markets, but not in the way that people think. So let's go to Bernie Sanders. Let's go to the income inequality crew. Well, why do you think there's so much income inequality? Because the high-paying union manufacturing jobs went overseas. And they were replaced by service jobs that don't pay as much, or public service, or whatever. So what Trump clearly said is, I'm going to bring back those manufacturing jobs. People are going to invest in plants in America. That's going to heighten
Right, but that's an if.
the potential to earn money
But that's
by
highly
Americans.
But that's highly speculative.
No, it's not.
Okay, it might. I don't think it's highly
Yeah, I don't
speculative,
think
but
it
it
is
is
either.
speculative.
Come
But
on,
that's
Chris
what Trump wants
Cuomo.
to do. He wants to bring back the jobs that have fled overseas. Apple already said it's going to relocate billions back to the USA from China. The Gulf nations are now pledging $1 trillion infrastructure investment in American manufacturing. So if you are a regular American, all right, and you're trying to earn a living, and you have a choice between getting into a manufacturing plant and earning $75 an hour or driving an Uber, what are you going to take? But the manufacturing jobs have gone to Mexico and China and Southeast Asia because the workers there work for cheap.
Yeah.
Some of them are slave workers. In China, they have actually slave workers. So the American companies go, oh, we don't care about American workers. We want to make as much money as possible. We'll go on over there. Trump wants to stop that. Okay, again, raise your hand if you don't understand. It's important that you understand what the intent is. Now, Cuomo goes, speculative. All right. So Trump has one of two choices. He can ignore it like every other president has,
Yeah, which would do no good.
or he can try to fix it.
Yeah.
And he chose to try to fix it. That's where we are. Okay. I think that is about as fair an explanation as you will ever get from any person in the media. Here are the other reactions from the media last night. Go.
It is hard to overstate the potential impact of tonight's breaking news, and it's no exaggeration to say it has the potential to affect more lives and livelihoods in this country and around the world than virtually anything short of wars and pandemics.
Donald Trump has been on a quest to turn the United States relationship with our friend Canada, one of our closest allies, on its head between his manufactured trade war and threats to make Canada the 51st state. His actions are so ludicrous and so deeply unpopular that they are prompting the booing of our national anthem at NHL and NBA games held in Canada over the last couple of weeks.
President Trump calling it a declaration of economic independence. He calls it Liberation Day. It is almost certainly to liberate more money from your wallet.
It's utter nonsense, the European Union.
Wow, they're so upset that they're booing during the national anthem in Canada. My gosh, guys, come on. You cannot be this mad at President Trump. You should be mad at Carney. You cannot be mad at President Trump. He has to reset the baseline, and he has to do that for America. Just like in Canada, they have to choose the right candidate, or they're going to be the 51st state. I'm telling you, if Mark Carney becomes the prime minister, it's a wrap for Canada. It's a wrap. I don't care how many people over there like him. I've been watching them. I've been watching Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre since before they even announced an election. And I said it. I said, Mark Carney is giving Hillary Clinton. He's giving Joe Biden. If you know anything about American politics, this is not the guy you guys want to be your prime minister.
Trade war and threats to make Canada the 51st state. His actions are so ludicrous and so deeply unpopular that they are prompting the booing of our national anthem at NHL and NBA games held in Canada over the last couple of weeks.
President
NHL and NBA games held in Canada, they're booing during the national anthem. Oh man, that's crazy.
Trump calling it a declaration of economic independence. He calls it Liberation Day. It is almost certainly to liberate more money from your wallet.
It's utter nonsense.
Tapper,
The European
stop
Union
lying.
charges the U.S. a 39% tariff. That's obviously preposterous. It's totally invented. We don't even know where that number comes from.
That's just stupid. He's stupid. All right?
The European
NHL and NBA games held in Canada over the last couple of weeks.
President Trump calling it a declaration of economic independence. He calls it Liberation Day. It is almost certainly to liberate more money from your wallet.
You know, Jay Tapper, he is something else.
It's utter nonsense. The European Union charges the U.S. a 39% tariff. That's obviously preposterous. It's totally invented. We don't even know where that number comes from.
What do you mean you don't know where the number comes from? What do you think he did? Make it up?
That's just stupid. He's stupid. All right? Everybody knows that the VAT tax in Europe,
Value added tax.
which is between 20 and 25% in most places, jacks up the price of all imported goods, not just from the USA.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of dishonesty, if I'm the head of Comcast NBC, he doesn't work for me. He's just not smart enough to work for me. And he's misleading everybody. And then Wallace, his actions are so ludicrous and deeply unpopular. Of course they're going to be deeply unpopular with Canada and every other country because they're not going to make as much money. If Trump's successful in what he's doing, those countries aren't going to make as much cash. So they're not going to be happy about it.
Yeah.
But again, Nicole Wallace, does she know anything? And I hate to get personal because I know these people. I got to tell you, they don't know anything, and they don't care to know. They don't care. All they want to do is bash and hate Donald Trump, and that's what they do. But this stuff gets out to casual Americans who don't follow the news, who don't understand what this is all about.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up here. So, short-term pain is going to happen. And Donald Trump is responsible for the short-term pain. That's a fact. Longer term, nobody knows. I don't know. I can't even guess. I'm hoping, not for ideological or party reasons, I'm hoping that Trump makes good deals and the American economy surges, which absolutely can happen as well. And that's what I'm hoping for. Why? Because I want every American to live better, to have more security. Has nothing to do with Donald Trump. I thought his presentation yesterday was pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, I know what I'm talking about here. I've been to 86 countries. Rivera told the truth. He's all over there. You're not going to see any cars made in America in these countries. So, Trump is a disruptor. Will he win? Place your bets. That's the memo. Pass tax cuts.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward a little bit past his Bill's commercials because I want to see what he's going to talk about over here.
He's helped to mitigate the impact of tariffs on the U.S. economy. Expect the Dow to drop more than 1,000 points. Trump is taking risks with other people's money. Short term, as we discussed at the top of the broadcast, he is. But the tariffs are not fair. I hate to say we'll see because that's what all the others say, but no one can predict how this will turn out. That's better. John, it's all about saving face for Putin. He can't stay in power. He has nothing to show for the 100,000 loss of Russians. The idea that something Russia is poised to come after the Baltic countries is crazy. Russia has neither the men nor material to invade NATO countries. That is true. But Russia can do a lot of damage to Moldova, to other smaller countries in the region that used to be dominated by the Soviet Union, and that's what America and NATO are trying to head off. Just so you know the big picture. Jay Como, I guess I have to ask, what effect does this have on the USA one way or another? Ukraine, where Russia holds ethnic Russians, the area was given to the USSR for the sacrifices during World War II. It's Europe's responsibility. You know, if you're an isolationist, you're an isolationist. But believe me, if Putin runs wild, it's going to hurt the USA. No doubt about it. The bolder this man is, the more damage he's going to do to the world. David, Bill, how do you?
All right, so I'm gonna stop there because Bill's kind of reading off comments about like people are asking him questions. Let me see something here.
401k or IRA. With Bill, remember, to BillO'Reilly.com. We are going to show you, going to tell you the truth. We will. Okay, so our retention rate, because it's renewal time now for BillO'Reilly.com subscribers,
Tell us, Bill, why?
Your wallet. So most Americans are not politically ideological. They're not.
That was a conference Bill O'Reilly did with Chris Cuomo and Stephen A. Smith. It was pretty good from what I understand. So, you know, Bill makes a lot of good points there. He must have another clip with Elon, so I can find that one for you guys tomorrow. But he makes a lot of good points there where he talks about, you know, the average American and not understanding what tariffs is. You know, he's like, if you go and you talk to the average American on the street and you ask them, you know, they'll say, what's going on with all this tariff stuff? And, you know, Bill will say, you don't like it? Like, what don't you like about it? And they don't really have an answer. And he's right about that. The average everyday American that isn't following the news or politics or anything like that, they are easily manipulated. They are easy target. Because I used to be a part of that crowd, so I would know. Just saying things like the news is depressing or, you know, I don't want to know anything about that. Not realizing that this is something that you should be paying attention to long before you go to the polls. So you understand that you understand who you're voting for and who you're about to put into the White House. So I think that, again, Bill O'Reilly, one of the people who's talked about tariffs often. It's been talked about a lot, but if you're not interested in it or you just want to be a person that just complains and not learn about what's actually happening, then yes, this is going to be a confusing, rough time for you. There's a reason why a lot of this has not stressed me out. I know the stock market is very volatile right now, but it usually is like that. There are times where it can be pretty steady, but that's really in a perfect world if it were to be steady for months and months and years at a time, and it's normally not like that. So I'm not panicking, I'm not worrying. If you understand the stock market, it bounces back. You buy when it's low, you sell when it's high. So it's like, this stuff is gonna take time. It's gonna take time. A lot of things that people are complaining about that they're wanting to see right now. Trump said that day one prices would go down. Well, it's Bill O'Reilly said this too, and I would agree with him. If you don't understand hyperbole, if you don't understand that that's what that was. Everyone does that. And I have said this time and time again, I'm like, you guys do understand that if a Democrat would have won, if Kamala Harris would have won, there's no way that prices would have went down the next day that she was in office. It doesn't work like that. So either way, this is how we know that we're dealing with people who don't have a great understanding of maybe politics, news, how they work, the course of action, and so on and so forth. So switching gears a little bit, we're going to jump over to Face the Nation, and they covered Pentagon reviewing Trump Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's signal use. So I spoke about this a little earlier. There was a reporter who was added to a chat that a bunch of cabinet members were using on the Signals platform. You have a lot of extreme leftists and Democrats calling for Pete Hegseth to step down, Tulsi Gabbard to step down, Kash Patel, because this happened. I do not think this was necessarily a national security breach. There are some things in there, but as someone who served in the military, like Tulsi Gabbard, like Pete Hegseth, and I also watched the Senate hearing, I'm not going to say that the text or the chain of text is bare of information. I'm not going to say that. There's definitely some information in there. But when you are going, if a platoon, a squadron, a unit, whatever have you, a special forces unit is getting ready to go on a mission, there are certain pieces of information that are very pertinent that would be a part of that mission that are just not in this chain of text. They're just not there. There are no names there. There are no location names there. There are no timestamps of when set name will arrive at set location. Like a lot of that stuff is missing, and a lot of it is very broad information that the public was already given and or knew about. So I do think that a lot of people are being very overzealous when it comes to this. I'm not gonna lie, you have some good questions that were asked in the Senate by Democrats. You had some senators asking, so if instead of it being a reporter from the United States being added to this text chain, if it was a reporter from Russia, or from China, would it then be considered a national security breach? Well, I mean, at that point, I would say, of course, because this is someone that was added to a text chain that's one, out of the country. Two, if there are adversaries, that's definitely a problem. That's not what this reporter was. So I'm not trying to defend the Trump administration because I'm like pro anything. It's more like I just understand what it looks like, what mission optics look like, because I've served in the military, and there's just a lot of things that aren't in that chain of text for it to be considered like some type of national security breach where some pertinent information was released, given, or leaked, and now America's in some type of danger. That just wasn't the situation. So let's just see what they're saying about Secretary Pete Hegseth's signal use.
Let's get back to that breaking news. The Defense Department Inspector General will look into whether Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's use of signal complied with Defense Department policies. So let's get to CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. What do we know about the Inspector General and evaluating Hegseth's use of this signal?
Well, Julia, it's going to start by drilling down into what happened, right? Who's involved and whether those individuals broke the House rules here at the DOD. It's a one-page memo. It's brief, intentionally brief, and probably vague, only serving as a notification that the Inspector General will be conducting what he calls an evaluation, and it is in direct response to the letter he received by the Senate Armed Services Committee requesting an inquiry. So it really breaks down to two objectives, and that's why it's important that these two are outlined. First, to determine what extent the Secretary of Defense and other DoD personnel complied or maybe did not comply with the strict DoD rules and procedures using commercial apps like Signal to conduct official business. The second objective is to review whether that was in compliance with classification. So whether the information that was shared in that Signal conversation was classified, and also whether that adheres to policy attaining to records and retention requirements. So conversations that take place at this sort of level need to be officially recorded. So they'll be looking into that as well. So for starters, the evaluation will focus obviously here at the Pentagon, at the Office of the Secretary of Defense, to a wider extent in Washington, D.C. It's going to include U.S. Central Command, which is actually based in Florida, in Tampa, Florida. That's where CENTCOM is headquartered. Because considering the conversation had to do with Houthi airstrikes that were underway, and Yemen is inside that CENTCOM area of responsibility. So this is just sort of the opening salvo. 2 individuals have to be put forward, it's requesting, and it's basically to put them on notification that this investigation, I'm going to rephrase that, this evaluation is underway.
Evaluation, okay, got that. All right, Charlie Daggett. Charlie, thank you.
See, I think that that's very interesting because there's going to be an evaluation, and what they're going to really evaluate is was classified information leaked? Was classified information leaked, or was someone included in a chat on a platform in a text thread where classified information might have been revealed? I do not think that that's the case. And this is just literally, I think anyone who has served in the military and been able to go on any type of missions or been deployed in another country and they understand the context of a mission, they would be able to tell you that there just wasn't enough pertinent information in this text thread for there to be a national security breach. That's my opinion based on everything I heard, and I watched the Senate hearing live. I thought Tulsi Gabbard handled herself well. I thought Kash Patel did well. Kash pretty much shut him down right away, like he normally does, and I expected him to, but he's not going to answer any questions if there's any type of ongoing investigation. And we know that because Kash was like that before he was the FBI director, so I didn't expect any of that to change. Tulsi Gabbard was still very, still very stoic in how she answered her questions, very straight-faced, very serious, and she normally has that type of disposition, so I'm not too worried about it. I didn't like it because I already knew. I'm like, oh great, the media is going to take this and have a field day and run with it. And they did. That is exactly what they did. So speaking of the media having a field day with things, Luigi Mangione faces possibility of death penalty in CEO case. Now, why is this important? Well, one, in order for him to actually be facing the death penalty, his case will need to have met a certain number of prerequisites, right? It would need to qualify to be a case that would be geared towards the death penalty. You can't just take any case and just say, okay, this person committed a crime, so we're seeking the death penalty as punishment. Depending on the case, the judge literally could just dismiss it or throw it out because they would say that it's unjustifiable, doesn't fit the crime. There's lots of reasons, and the main thing, the golden ticket in order for someone to even seek death penalty is that the burden of proof on a prosecution to prove premeditation it's so heavy. They have to really prove. I'm not saying like maybe Luigi Mangione always has known that the healthcare system was broken, and then like someone in his family who's really close to him got sick, and then he lost his job, and then he couldn't get meds, and then the person got sicker, and then maybe it was someone who raised him, and then that person ended up dying, and then he had a psychotic break, and then without even thinking, he went and sought this person out and got them. I'm not even talking about that. It falling along those lines. That's the crazy thing about the burden of proof on the prosecution for premeditation. Even that probably wouldn't work. They would literally need to be able to prove that he specifically was thinking about Brian Thompson, I don't know, a couple days, a week, or so prior to killing him, and in his mind, even a week or two prior to thinking about Brian Thompson, he was always going to kill him. Like from the first time he thought about Brian Thompson, he was like, I'm going to kill this man. I just don't think that that's how that worked out. I'm not sure where his mind was at totally, because we haven't seen everything play out. But the burden of proof on a prosecution to prove premeditation is pretty heavy. So, I mean, right now it's huge headlines. Oh, AG seeks death penalty for Luigi, but I just don't think that it'll stick. I know in the state of New York, I believe that they've done away with the death penalty. So even if he was convicted, I believe he would just serve life in prison if that were to happen. So we're gonna go over. Shout out to News Center Maine. I chose them, a smaller news station, and sometimes that's better, right? We get more transparency when they're not so huge and large and so many eyes isn't on them. So let's take a look at what they're saying.
Other news, Luigi Mangione, the man accused of shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, could now face the death penalty in the murder case against him.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says she has now told federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty for Mangione, making it now the first time the Justice Department will pursue capital punishment in President Trump's second term. NBC New York's Chris Glorioso has the latest on the case.
The stakes now as high as they can be for Luigi Mangione, accused of killing the United Healthcare CEO, and as of today, facing the federal death penalty. A statement from Attorney General Pam Bondi saying, I have directed federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty in this case as we carry out President Trump's agenda to stop violent crime. Mayor Adams among the first to publicly react.
Man, listen, Mayor Adams. This guy is funny. He's running again, and he's running as an independent. I don't know how I feel about that. A lot of people are calling him a traitor. I don't know. I think he's aware right now that his party is just doing so horribly that to come out and be running as a Democrat, he probably won't get much support. I think he's very aware of that right now. So that's why he's choosing the independent route. I don't think it's genuine, so that's why I don't know how I feel about it. I didn't like his response here too much because I don't know. I think it's puppeted. I think it's scripted, If you don't think that the guy deserves it, regardless of if you're running or not, then just say that that's how you feel. There's a lot of people that feel like he doesn't deserve the death penalty, and they don't care. They're just gonna say, no, I don't think he deserves it because I agree with him. It resonates with me that the healthcare system in America is broken. I mean, I think there's a decent amount of people that would agree with him. So I don't know. I don't like the way Mayor Adams really, did this here. I do feel like he's playing chess right now. And I understand that he has to, but, you got to stay true to who you are.
The act.
You intentionally went in and you took someone's life. It was a horrific act, and whatever process they put in place, I respect that process.
The decision to make the case against Mangione.
It's always a horrific act when you go in and take somebody's life. That's what I'm saying. It was such a scripted answer, It's always a horrific act. I'm going to agree with whatever punishment they put in place. It's like, well, are you going to agree with it because you're a public official, or are you going to agree with it because you genuinely agree with it? So I don't think we're going to get much honesty, out of him right now, but that's where he stands.
A capital case comes 3 months after former President Biden commuted the sentences of 37 convicts on federal death row, sparing the lives of all except 3 federal inmates facing execution. In response to the death penalty decision, Luigi Mangione's attorney issued a statement suggesting the move is partly a defense of big health care by seeking to murder Luigi.
So this is Karen Friedman, defense attorney for Luigi Mangione. She says, by seeking to murder Luigi Mangione, the Justice Department has moved from the dysfunctional to the barbaric. By doing this, they are defending the broken, immoral, and murderous healthcare industry that continues to terrorize the American people. So I didn't think it was smart for his lawyer to make this comment. I mean, I don't think she was thinking when she made it, because she said by seeking to murder Luigi Mangione, as if he didn't murder someone in cold blood. I mean, I don't think that was the best statement, but maybe she was slightly emotional when she made it. I just don't think she should have led with that, by seeking to murder him, because he's only on trial because he murdered someone. So yeah, I don't think that was the best statement to make.
Mangione, the Justice Department has moved from the dysfunctional to the barbaric, she said. By doing this, they are defending the broken, immoral, and murderous healthcare industry that continues to terrorize the American people.
I believe he is innocent. He deserves a fair trial. I support him completely.
Mangione, who has seen scores of fans write supportive notes and show up to procedural court hearings, is scheduled first to be tried on state murder charges in New York. The Ivy League grad, accused of planning and carrying out the shocking sidewalk assassination of healthcare executive Brian Thompson, has pleaded not guilty. After the state case is resolved, the federal capital case is expected to unfold. Death penalty opponents urging Americans not to focus on the depravity of the alleged crimes, but on flaws of the legal system that sometimes yield mistakes.
The question is not whether people deserve to die for the crimes they've committed. If we have a flawed, biased, unreliable system, we cannot impose this perfect punishment with an imperfect system.
That was Chris Glorioso reporting. Now, capital punishment has essentially been abolished in New York State since 2004 when the state's highest court declared the statute unconstitutional. So this means that if Luigi Mangione were convicted of state charges, he would face life in prison.
You know, and it makes sense with Chris Caruso, the guy who was speaking just before that gentleman said, like, you can't impose this perfect punishment on an imperfect system. I would say that there is some truth to that. There is some truth to that. But that does not justify somebody being shot cold-bloodedly in the street while they're walking to a conference. It just doesn't. Granted, I don't think the system is perfect. There were times in my life where I saw people experience things, people close to me or not, and I thought the system was pretty horrific. You know, so it's a very controversial case because I know to some extent this can resonate with a lot of people. To others, it does resonate with them, but they still say, you know, he had no right to do what he did, which I do agree with that. I don't think, you know, that he had the right to go take somebody's life in cold blood because whatever he had dealt with or went through. I don't agree with that. You know, so we're just gonna have to see how this plays out. I'm not gonna leak too much on this, like as far as my own personal opinion. I'd rather just see how this plays out in court. Since the AG has instructed the DOJ to seek the death penalty, I just want to see how it's going to play out in court. So we're going to keep a close look on this, keep a close eye on this, look at it closely as it continues to unravel. But with that being said, guys, we're going to switch over. We're going to switch gears a little bit and go over to some Canadian news. Short clip. Shout out to Todd over at The Simple Investor. We cover things by The Simple Investor on this channel often. I think that Todd has a very good take on Canadian news. I think he's very spot on, very intellectual, and I think he's fair. You know, I think if Mark Carney were the better candidate, he would outright say that. He's outright said that Pierre is probably a better pick out of the three because I keep forgetting this other gentleman's name, but he looks like he's Indian, I believe. But yeah, so. He has a pretty good take on things. He's been following this before it even became an election, so I've been following him since before that. So he was one of the people I chose to keep up with. The Toronto Sun is also pretty good, and the Elevate podcast with the number 8 in Elevate, he's pretty good as well. So I tend to follow these guys when it comes to like my Canadian news. Much smaller platforms, but then in return I get much more transparent, honest news. They don't keep things out like the mainstream media in Canada does. So let's take a look at what Todd over at The Simple Investor has to say about Mark Carney. Headline reads, Mark Carney's shocking take on Trump's tariffs. He panics.
So President Trump announced his tariff analysis yesterday, and I think the world itself is a little bit confused, you know. So many leaders, especially here in Canada, they were set to start firing off at the United States with countermeasures and it's a crisis and let's start a fight. And Trump actually softened his approach. So he started the tariffs, he's saying, at 10%. And by the way, it looks like Canada's got a big part of the pass here. And one of the biggest things that he said during,
Todd has been the first person to say that. It looks like Canada has had a bit of a pass here. Nobody else is saying that. Everybody else is just all mad about tariffs. It's like, listen, come on. The reason why I don't get mad at anything Pierre Poilievre says is because as someone who's running to be prime minister, just like someone who's running to be president of the United States, you're going to speak from the perspective and in the tone of this country's first, whatever country you're representing. So when Pierre says things like, President Trump is doing this and his horrible tariffs and he's imposing this, even that doesn't bother me that Pierre is saying that. I still think he's the better candidate for Canada to go with as far as prime minister. I still think that regardless of what he says, because if I was a Canadian, I would want to vote for Pierre and I would want Pierre to have the mindset of Canada first, just like I would want the president of the United States to have that mindset. So it doesn't bother me when Pierre says anything about the United States. He's doing what he needs to do. And I think that if he's the one that comes on board, he is going to do his best to make sure things are fair for Canada. And if Mark Carney comes on board, Canada will be the 51st state.
By the way, it looks like Canada's got a big part of the pass here. And one of the biggest things that he said during, his analysis of this is that, he's just trying to even the playing field. So I know there's a lot of people out there right now that are complaining about tariffs, but as I've always said, it's part of business. This is what countries have done for centuries. Tariffs are very common, and there's a lot more involved in them than most people understand. So for us, when we take a look at the tariffs that have been put on Canada, our leadership immediately says they're going to war as opposed to negotiations. Yeah. And, this is the big thing, the downfall about our existing government and the existing leader of, our governing party, Mark Carney, has no idea how to deal with this particular gentleman. Let's see what he says.
But you see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart? And that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate.
Okay, so before everybody jumps up and down and says Trump man bad, remember, he was elected on his platform that he was going to turn around and work towards making the United States stronger. So again, I'm not faulting him for it. I actually think that Canada got a reprieve in this entire thing. So, our leadership, which is completely lost, we lost 10 years of being Canadians with the Trudeau government. And it hasn't gotten any better. In fact, this guy is actually worse. And the problem is he's trying to create something that doesn't exist. He wants to turn around and make things an emergency, a crisis. Oh my God. I mean, look, 10%, nobody wants to pay extra. But the truth is that Canada is actually exempt to a lot of it. And when you really drill down the numbers, it's not going to be catastrophic like this guy wants you to believe. Let's see what he has to say.
We're going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures. We are going to protect our workers, and we are going to build the strongest economy in the G7. In a crisis, it's important to come together, and it's essential to act with purpose and with force. And that's what we will do.
Okay, that was like no explanation. See what I'm saying with Mark Carney? Like he kills me. He kills me every time. We're gonna fight these tariffs with countermeasures. He didn't even say what countermeasures. Like that, he didn't even say anything. Oh my goodness, Canada, please don't vote for this guy.
Okay, I need to take some of his narrative right there. He's right. In a crisis, we need to come together with some force and countermeasures. Hello, Canadians. This guy is actually the crisis issue. Okay, it's not the tariffs. Now remember, we've already seen President Trump pulled back on a whole lot of stuff, but this guy isn't speaking for Canada once again. He's trying to create a problem. And instead of creating a solution, he just wants to continue to put gas on a fire that is actually slowly getting extinguished by President Trump. So again, I don't consider him our prime minister. I just consider him the leader of the Liberal Party who all he wants to do is fear-monger Canadians into voting for him. My real question is that he doesn't use the word Canada, Canadians enough because he can't actually understand Canadians because he has far removed himself from being a Canadian. Regardless of all you naysayers going, wait a minute, Todd, he's the Prime Minister of Canada. Is he really? I mean, you need to think about this, okay? We never elected him to be in power. And for those of you that are going to continue to tell me that, oh no, you don't elect the Prime Minister, you do, through the MPs, okay? Right. So let's get past that.
Yeah, through the members of parliament. That's what I'm saying. Like, you guys might not elect him the way, like, we quote unquote elect, if you want to be verbatim with the word, but you still have to vote for, like, your members of parliament, and whoever gets, from what I understand, whoever gets the most vote out of those members, that's who becomes the leader of the party. So, I mean, he got there some way.
The fact is, this guy doesn't speak for Canadians, never will, and nor should we ever allow him to. But, that said, let's find out what President Trump had to say next.
Likewise to all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs, I say, terminate your own tariffs.
So, you know what? Is fair trade the right way to look at this? I believe so. I mean, after all, everybody produces something. They have to take a look at how it gets exchanged when we start doing imports and exports. Canada is probably one of the richest countries with natural resources in the world, and yet Carney himself continues to tell Canadians he doesn't want us to have an oil pipeline. But what recently happened? Well, you know what? His company actually turned around and bought a pipeline, the major pipeline in the U.S. And this is one of the things that we have to be very aware of.
His company turned around and bought a major pipeline in the U.S. and also, when he didn't support it being in Canada, he did support it financially for the pipelines to be in the Middle East. This is what I'm talking about with this guy, Carney. Like, he's always doing something somewhere else, and he's not doing it for Canada. And this is not to mention, after following, Todd, the Toronto Sun, the Elevate podcast, listening to people in Canada, they're already mad because the guy has 3 passports. Okay, does that matter? I guess not so much, right? But they're already mad that he has 3 passports and that he doesn't spend the majority of his time in Canada. His family does not live in Canada. He moved his headquarters out of Canada. He didn't want pipelines in Canada, but he financed them and supported them to be in the Middle East, and he supported them, and his company just invested in them. But anytime it comes to, like, Canada needing it, he wants to keep it so far away from them. And Pierre Poilievre speaks about this, and he just doesn't give. He's not giving Canada first. Like, Mark Carney does not give that.
Who are you truly going to vote for? Well, one of the guys that did get voted into power just recently, or back into power, Premier Doug Ford. Well, yesterday he had something to say before President Trump's announcement. Let's see what Premier Ford had to say.
Greetings from Germany. What's up, Klein?
You need to hear about time. You said you have a story that challenges everything.
So you're saying you take all of your tariffs off. I'm saying we will take them all.
That's right.
Then why is that not already? I guess my question is, why has all of that not already happened? And does President Trump know that you'd be prepared to do that?
He knows, and Secretary Lutnick knows that we're going to take these tariffs off like in the next minute. If he said he's taking their tariffs off, let's look at the auto sector.
So here you go. So again, I think Premier is finally waking up to what he's doing and looking at negotiations as negotiations, not just a backyard brawl. But one of the important things I think we need to take away from this is actually it's
tariffs off.
That's what this guy is, Premier Ford. Premier Doug Ford is his name. Doug Ford. He is in Ontario.
Let's look at the auto sector.
So here you go. So again, I think Premier is finally waking up to what he's doing and looking at negotiations as negotiations, not just a backyard brawl. But one of the important things I think we need to take away from this is actually it's smarter to be a cooler head and not react immediately to find out what you're actually reacting against. When people say tariffs and what's been the narrative for the last little while, it's all about, countermeasures. I mean, countermeasures sounds like you're a submarine pilot that's going to turn around or, an aviator that's going to sit there and throw out countermeasures. It sounds like you're constantly trying to attack the next party. How about you figure out what the attack is, how it's been instigated, and what to do about it properly? Again, look at Premier Ford. It's probably the calmest he's reacted to something like this. So hopefully we're going in the right direction with some of the mindset. But that's what this really is. President Trump is trying to sit there and wake the world up and say, look, you know what? Trade hasn't always been fair. He's taken his country and said, I'm going to take care of my country. That's all any person that when they live in a country wants to have from their leadership, from the people in charge. And quite frankly, Canada hasn't had that in over a decade.
And that's the reason why Todd just said it. Canada hasn't had it in a decade. He's not counting Mark Carney, right? Because he calls him unelected, which I understand exactly why after he broke it down in a previous video. So this is why I don't get offended by anything. Someone could literally come on my live, which I wouldn't advise that, and ask, well, why are you even watching Canadian news? Like, we're in a trade war with them. No, we're actually not in a trade war with anybody. It's President Trump resetting the baseline because so many poor administrations before him didn't do it. And like I have said prior, I wish we had understanding from other countries. And really what President Trump did during his speech yesterday about the tariffs, he enlightened us that we do have understanding. He said it himself, talking about the last leader of Japan who was assassinated, talking about the leader of China, talking to other world leaders and saying, hey, we gotta address the tariff because it's not fair. And these leaders would say to President Trump, yeah, you're right, I know, it's not fair. So they already knew. Like, they already knew that they were having it. Like, come on, man. Some of these countries have had the biggest lick off the United States. Like, they have had the biggest come up. And they knew it. And it's like I said to my wife, I'm like, no one's going to come back around and say, oh, you know what? Like, the United States, we're charging you guys 95% and you're not charging us anything. So we're going to come down. It's like, they're not going to do that. That's not how trade works. So the fact that President Trump is doing what he's doing, I said I wish we had more understanding. But like he said, the country shouldn't be mad because he's charging them less. But they're going to be mad because they weren't being charged anything. So it doesn't even matter if he went in at 5% on everybody. They would still be upset. He's only at 25. And there's countries that are triple that number. And not only did the countries get mad at President Trump for putting out 25%, but the American people that have no idea what tariffs are got mad at him for going out at 25%. Not understanding that he was imposing 25% on nations who have 150%, 250%, 700% on the United States.
Our biggest problem has been the liberal Trudeau government. Now, our biggest crisis, for sure, is a Carney liberal government. And for any of you that are sitting there thinking that it's going to get better, because some people are saying, yeah, but Carney's a businessman, he's a negotiator.
No, it's not.
I call BS on that.
Yeah.
Okay, he's with one of the biggest companies in the world. He's a negotiator.
Listen, I'm not saying he's a businessman, he's a negotiator. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm going to side with Todd with this because I feel like I know where he's going to go because I watch him often. He's a businessman. He's a negotiator. Listen to me, Canada. Mark Carney is not Donald Trump. He is not giving me Donald Trump. He's not. I'm trying to tell you guys that he's not. He's a businessman and he's a negotiator and he's giving crooked. I'm telling you that he is. When the media asks Mark Carney, what are you going to do if there is a conflict of interest with one of the businesses that, I don't know, you own, you're a part of, you have endeavors in or whatever, and you are the Prime Minister of Canada. What does that look like for you? And he literally, I had watched him out of his own mouth say things like, you know, when we get to that point, we will figure something out. We are putting plans into place as to what that looks like. Oh no, sir. That's no, sir. You know, that's no level of transparency for someone who wants to run an entire nation. And you don't have this plan right now, then you don't need to be the Prime Minister. Because when American reporters and Americans ask President Trump about Elon Musk, because of how much money he has in all his business endeavors, and he owns a lot of things, we already know, the American people were already told, not from just Elon Musk himself, but also from President Trump, that he will dismiss himself from his business endeavors so he can continue his civil service in the government. So if that's not Mark Carney's answer, which it has not been, you guys need to be worried about that.
Because some people are saying, yeah, but Carney's a businessman, he's a negotiator. I call BS on that. Okay, he's with one of the biggest companies in the world as a chairman who's just off to the side right now. He's doing side negotiations to benefit the country, the company, not the country. And what Canada truly needs to do is actually have somebody elected that is going to manage and make Canada prosper correctly by utilizing what we have as Canadians. You know what? One of the hardest things that people don't understand is the fact that we've got great Canadians. We've got hardworking Canadians, tax-paying Canadians, families here that all they want to do is just have a good shot at having a good life.
Yep.
I think right now the existing government doesn't want that. I mean, coming up with the analogy that, hey, let's throw up 500,000 cube farms a year is ridiculous. And yes, it's basically a cube farm is what he wants to build. And if you noticed all of his statements, he's not talking about home ownership, okay? He's talking about, if you noticed all of his statements, he's not, cube farms a year is ridiculous. And yes,
Cube farms? What are cube farms, Todd? I'll look it up.
500,000 cube farms a year is ridiculous. And yes, it's basically a cube farm is what he wants to build. And if you noticed all of his statements, he's not talking about home ownership, okay? He's talking about affordable housing. What happens with affordable housing? Government owned, government run, and basically the left is coming through every time he has a speech.
Yeah, your housing can be affordable. That doesn't mean you're ever going to own it. You're not. You can live in an affordable apartment. You can live in an affordable house that you have a landlord in, but that's not the same thing as home ownership. All you're doing is making someone else rich.
So, as I wrap this up, one of the most important things I like to tell everybody is keep your eye on the ball. Listen to the narrative. Mark Carney is nothing but a puppet for somebody else. He's just taken over for Trudeau. The cabinet's basically the same. The lifestyle will be the same. As Canadians, it's actually going to hurt more than less if he gets elected. We need to take a look as Canadians, what is the best way we can move forward? One of the most important things always, watch out your family, watch out for your kids, the next generation. Love to hear your comments on it.
Shout out to you, Todd. Thanks for your commentary. We appreciate you on this channel, man. If you guys get a chance, check out The Simple Investor. Todd over there, he has 32.4 thousand subscribers. When President Trump first started throwing around this idea of Canada being the 51st state and talking about this line that's there, and it's almost like it was drawn with a ruler, it's an imaginary line. This really was in reference to tariffs, because he said that if Canada became the 51st state, that there would be no tariffs on them. So, I was asked how I felt about this, and initially, and I haven't changed much because I just am thinking about a country's sovereignty, and I said, if I was a whole country and someone asked me, hey, you want to be in my left pocket, I would feel offended too, because I just think it's crazy that Canada's, they're a whole country, and they're not, there are countries that are way smaller than Canada, so I could understand, there would be some level of offense in just the 51st state, we're Canada. I could understand that, because this would be like another country asking the United States to be a blip on their map, and we're the United States. So I could understand it. But with that being said, based on how Canada's been in the last decade with Justin Trudeau and how devastating most Canadians are saying the economy is, a lot of the Canadians, they literally sound like what the Americans sounded like before we went into our election. The 51st state doesn't seem impossible if Mark Carney becomes the prime minister. And I don't know if that's because he moved his headquarters to New York a couple days after President Trump was inaugurated, because I do know that. Pierre Poilievre has been very transparent about that. He said that publicly. And so have people like Todd, the Elevate podcast, the Toronto Sun. So there's a lot of people that have just been watching Mark Carney move since President Trump has been in office, and they don't like his movement. They don't. It seems like to some Canadians that Pierre Poilievre is interested in the sovereignty of Canada, but Mark Carney is not. So when I sit here and I say things like, if you guys make Mark Carney your prime minister, you probably will become the 51st state. That's not me making a joke like, being facetious, teasing like, yeah, Canada's going to be just a state. It's more like, you guys don't want that to happen. And if you put the wrong person as your prime minister, it's a good chance that it's going to happen. So let's just be careful with that, guys. Like, I'm going to stay on top of my Canadian news because I do. Like I said in my last live stream, going to start looking at some Germany, UK news. These are all of the channels that are like my top watch countries. Usually in order, I have the United States, Canada, UK, and Germany. Sometimes it's Germany and the UK. And then some South African countries fall under that. And then every now and then a couple countries up in Europe pop up. So yeah, I'm going to try to keep up with all of that, but you guys know for the most part on the channel, I'm going to cover usually things in the United States and or American politics, but there are some things that just go across the board to where I can cover. And when other countries are putting prime ministers in place and presidents are being elected or world leaders, I think that that's something to pay attention to because that does affect the U.S. to some extent. So guys, with that being said, we're going to jump over to the last clip of the live stream. Shout out to Cliff Buell. I usually end my live streams every single night with a clip from Cliff. If it's not from Cliff, it's usually from another YouTube content creator who does Christian content. And tonight we will be looking at, are you this type of Christian? So Cliff is going to play us a clip about certain types of Christian that are out there and certain types of behavior they have when dealing with people. Let's watch.
Christians need to hear this. Everybody thinks you're spiritual based on your watering system. Did you read the Bible today? Did you pray today? Did you go to church today? Did you do the practices today? But what Jesus examines is the fruit. And that's how you recognize a tree. Which is why the Pharisees who did read the Bible today, who did pray today, who did go to church today, their fruit sucked, right? So they had a lot of knowledge, they didn't have much maturity. This was my problem with church people. They got a lot of knowledge and no love. Church people, in quotes. So I mean the negative pharisaical kind. Christian.
Right, the kind that will be able to spit a Bible verse out to you in 5 seconds. You guys know these people, right? You're not, none of you are these people, but we know these people that can spit out Bible verses in 5 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. But usually it's either followed up with condemnation, you're going to hell, or you don't really love Jesus. Yeah, the Pharisaical kind. I can understand where he's coming from. I've had interactions with them. You guys have had interactions with them. Interacting with Christians like that are some of the reason why some people won't go to church or might be interested in Jesus but not interested in regular church attendance and or the church. I can feel you on that. There's been people that have been there, and a lot of the times when I'm interacting with people and they ask me questions like that, or they say things like, man, I'm really interested in being a Christian, or I really love the Bible and scripture and things like that, but I can't get with church. And a lot of the times I tell people that Jesus is a perfect person who has a lot of imperfect people following him. You're not, just because you're inside of the church, it's not like you're going to deal with less hypocritical people or less heartache or no heartache at all. The church, they're people just like everybody is people. The only difference between them is that they are people that are choosing to give their life to Jesus Christ. So they have a very different fate when they pass on and leave this earth than people who don't, But nonetheless, I had to learn that, and I know Christians that are a lot older than me and more mature than me, they had to learn the same. And they did learn the same. I remember the first time I experienced some church hurt or some hurt from Christians, and it almost felt like worse than pain from like blood family members. It was really weird at first. Like, I was like, how could this bother me so much? And like, I'm not related to these people, or like, I don't, but it's because it's a spiritual family. Like, when you are a part of the family of God, you know, when you're first learning about it, it sounds just cool at first. Like, oh, the family of God, and like, yeah, like Jesus, and this is a spiritual thing. You don't realize that this is a legitimate family that you've been engrafted into. So like, when one of them hurts you, it literally feels like the pain of like if your brother hurt you, that your same brother that you grew up in the house with, or if your sister hurt you. Now, initially, if you haven't, I don't know, if you're not really deeply embedded into a church community or community of believers, it might not feel like that when you first get hurt. It might just feel like, well, whatever, roll off you, those people are fake. But if you get embedded and you actually are walking and doing life with these people and you have an experience like that, it almost feels like, it feels detrimental to a certain degree. It has caused people to deconstruct their faith, to leave the faith, to leave church, to doubt Jesus. It's caused all these things. So I love when the guy speaking talks about, who's not Cliff, speaks about the way that people were able to tell if a tree was good or not was by its fruit. And that's the one thing that you want to look for when you are amongst Christians, if you're not yet a believer or not familiar with maybe Christian behavior. You're not always going to see the greatest behavior. I'm just going to be honest and transparent with you guys, but the fruit is what's important, right? So we see in scripture where there are 9 fruits of the Spirit that Paul is listing, right? So we could just go off of the 9 fruits of the Spirit and say, you know, just look for joy, just look for long suffering, just look for peace, right? Just look for faithfulness, just look for self-control. But sometimes people are really good at those things without Jesus. So the key there would be they would have a line, like there would be a boundary with those people who haven't yet given their life to Christ. Like they might have some joy, topical, very surface joy, that you think that what you're seeing is joy and what they're experiencing is joy, but then it is very it could be very subjective, like depending on what's going on in life or what happens or what circumstances arise, their joy can diminish like that. And then all of a sudden to you, it seems like, well, was that really joy, or like were they just kind of like faking it until they make it? People who have developed a very intimate relationship with Jesus know that joy is something that we are able to have regardless of circumstances or situation. It's not subjective, it's not circumstantial. It's something that we have access to all of the time and always, and it's also a decision, right? So people who have a more intimate relationship with Jesus and the fruits of the Spirit are more apparent in their life, you might see some better behavior, some more consistent behavior. I'm not going to say that they're perfect because nobody's perfect, but you might see a lot more consistency in their life. You might see a lot more discipline in their life. They might have a lot more practices in place and boundaries in place to keep themselves guarded. So you want to look for things like that, so you kind of veer away and stay away from the Pharisaical kind of Christian. I'm not going to say you're not going to run into them. They exist, right? But if you're looking for someone who love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Like if you're looking for those things to be very prevalent and very consistent in a person's life, you're not looking at, as the gentleman said, like if they've done their daily practices in the day. You would be looking for some very consistent behavior that's put in place, some discipline that's very obvious, some practices and boundaries that keep some guardrails around a person. And then you know that you're seeing some good fruit. That's one way I could tell you guys that you can look for it. So with that being said, guys, you can always fast forward to the end of the live stream and get the Christian clip that and send it to people who might need it, because you never know what might resonate with someone or what might fall on someone's heart. We might think that the person doesn't need it, or maybe we're going to miss the mark if we send it, or maybe they'll get mad. Listen, just send it, because you never know what God is trying to say to someone. God is always speaking and we are rarely listening. So unfortunately, that's usually the case. So don't be afraid to clip the clip and send it to somebody who might need it. So with that being said, guys, I will see you guys again tomorrow around 16:30, 1700, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the PM. And what I always say, guys, love yourselves, love one another, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and be peaceful. Peace.